All right, everyone. Welcome to the Web3 Webinar. Today, we're talking about dynamic NFTs. This is episode 6. There's 5 more before this in case you guys want to go check those out. And we'll get right into it today. We're going to talk about the dynamics of dynamic NFTs, no pun intended. So we're going to talk about the nuances, what the technology entails, what they're going to be able to let users do, and as well as go through some use cases. So before we start, a little bit about us. We're a technology company with a design-first approach. We work with startups and enterprise firms. We're called Ionix Technologies. And my name is Shaan Ray. I'm a technology researcher and a Web3 specialist. I've been in the Web3 space for about 9 years now, 8 or 9 years now. I also have an interest in different emerging technologies, and I track some of the developments in Web3 very closely. So today, we're talking about dynamic NFTs. I'll jump right into it. A dynamic NFT. Also, it's as the lingo is developing, it's sometimes called a DNFT, where the D is lowercase and NFT is uppercase. So it's a type of NFT that can change some of its inherent properties based on external conditions. So basically, when something externally happens, it could trigger a change in an NFT. These changes are then recorded and added to the metadata of the NFT. These mechanisms are all controlled through smart contracts, and the smart contracts are obviously triggered by oracles or time-bound use cases or location-bound use cases, and other on-chain and off-chain events that cause the changes to then occur in dynamic NFTs. So it currently works in a very interesting way. The two primary networks that are exploring dynamic NFTs are ERC-1155 on the Ethereum network, and Solana is experimenting with it as well. You can kind of create dynamic NFTs using either platform at the moment. I know many other platforms are working and launching similar projects, dynamic NFT projects, as we're recording this. So it's basically an NFT where smart contracts provide instructions on how to change the NFT's metadata given a triggering event based on the external world or on-chain data. And that data or that trigger, it comes in through an oracle. Basically, we start with a base NFT, which is first created, and then smart contracts can regulate or govern the updates to that base NFT. You can unlock hidden traits or features. You can enhance the image. You can change all kinds of things about the NFT. The simplest form, or the very first and most common form of dynamic NFTs, are images, but we'll go into use cases that are more complex as well. I think images are just the first and easiest use cases. So like digital art, dynamic art, but there's a lot of other use cases that I'll get into today. Each smart contract can be triggered by events that are off-chain or on-chain. They can also be triggered by time, price, or location-based events. And I'll give you an example of that. So let's talk about art. You could have a piece of art that you could display on a screen in your living room, for example. And it can change color or hues, like the tone of the painting or the tone of the art on display can change according to like a time-bound feature or something of that sort. So it could, like, for example, if it's evening where you are currently, then the tones could become kind of like darker. If it's morning and you're kind of at that sunrise point, they could become lighter, or whatever you program the NFT to do. They could also change, the art could also change based on the temperature, the season, the time of the year, and maybe even the lunar position, or like a star constellation. So it's kind of whatever you come up with as the artist or as the creator of a dynamic NFT. You can program all those changes in, and then it interacts with the real world, and the art or whatever is on display in the example of a dynamic art NFT would change accordingly. For the elements to change, smart contracts would have to be put into place, and then they would pull data from APIs or oracles relating to the events in question or the conditions that have been defined in smart contracts. So the first example is art. I think art's the easiest example to understand. There's other use cases that are pretty cool as well. So generative art was the first one. The second one is, let's say, in-game progression. In-game progression, where new levels or traits of a player in a game are unlocked as the character progresses. and this data can be stored in the metadata of the dynamic NFT. So as the user data could be stored on a dynamic NFT, and as the character progresses through a game, that metadata keeps getting updated. So like you've gone through a certain number of experiences in the game, or you've unlocked a certain number of features in the game, and now they're part of your inherent dynamic NFT that owns the character. Another example, sticking with the game examples for a second, is a in-game object, which is not a character but an object. So like let's say it's like Thor's hammer in a game or something of that sort. So when a character takes a specific action, the action triggers increased efficiency. For example, you could have the speed and accuracy of a race car. So the race car in this case would sit in a dynamic NFT. And the speed and accuracy of it would improve when a user takes it for servicing and updates its wheels and whatever else. But as time goes by, the efficiency then reduces. So in one case, you could have a trigger that like when you take the race car to a servicing, then the features improve, and then they have a time and usage bound thing against them. So like, let's say like in 6 months or whatever, in like 60 hours of gameplay, and depending on how many miles you've driven in the game, the efficiency could then be reduced, forcing you or encouraging you to take it for another servicing. So a dynamic NFT can go like both backwards and forwards. It can kind of like have a feature that gets better or worse over time, and then it requires or encourages the user or the owner of the NFT to do something, right? So that's another example. I thought this was a very cool example. I've taken this example from the Chainlink blog, but it's a very cool example. It's where we're talking about tokenized real estate, where the changing metrics of the underlying asset can be updated and represented in its NFT. So in the image on the left, you have this is the first example, and then the second image is like the same house, but like a few years later. So 16 years later, I guess. So in the house DNFT metadata, it includes the address, the maintenance history, which is none at this point because the house is new. The age of the house is 1 year, and it's been sold for in 2021 for $400,000. That's for some reason that's we're missing a zero, but anyway. So and then in the next example, 16 years later, we're talking about the maintenance history has been updated. So the house has a new door and a new roof. You can also see that in the image if you look closely. And it's 16 years, and it's been sold a couple of times since then. So after the 2021 sale with the first owner, it's been then sold to someone 4 years later in 2025 for $50,000. We're missing zeros on that second and first image, so just add a zero in your mind. When we make the PowerPoint slide deck available, we're going to add the zeros. Sorry about that. And then it's been sold again in 2027, so 2 years later, for another $50,000 increase. So it has the kind of sales history associated with that house on the dynamic NFT of that house. So that's another example, which is tokenized real estate. Other use cases at the moment include identity. So you could have identity certifications based on dynamic NFTs. So like a passport or a digital passport of some sort, where the dynamic NFT saves the latest version of a person's travel history, personal information, the countries they've been to, the declarations they've done, that kind of thing. And then I think the biggest use case, that's why I saved this for last, but I think the biggest use case and the most impactful use case that you're going to see going forward is assets in augmented reality or in the metaverse. And when some of these assets, which exist in the AR form or augmented reality form, when they're owned by dynamic NFTs, their traits and features can be updated using a series of user-generated actions or location-based events. For example, we're talking about the Itsukushima Shrine, and then you could have a hologram of a tour guide standing in front of that shrine, and you own that experience. So you could own the hologram and that entire recording of the tour guide giving you a tour. And then the features in that hologram or that AR experience of yours, augmented reality experience of yours, they could change based on like the location, the season, the time of day, the tide level. Because I know like the shrine's out in it's off the coast, so it's like slightly submerged in the ocean. So the tide will definitely change the experience that the user is having. So the tour guide and the actual information you're getting from this hologram, it could be tweaked or kind of updated as or based on a certain number of events previously described as season, time of day, level of the tide, etc. The entire experience can be owned by a dynamic NFT, which then can use smart contracts to like pull all these different features about the external world and then present a dynamic NFT to you based on the conditions, the day that you were, or the day and time that you happen to be there. So it'll govern and customize the experience based on the inputs coming from the oracles through the smart contracts into the dynamic NFT. I hope that made sense. If you have any questions, we're going to open it up for questions in a couple of slides. In conclusion, dynamic NFTs are living tokens. They're also triggering they're triggering regular NFTs to be called static NFTs. So what we called NFTs up until a couple of months ago, or maybe 6 months ago, they're increasingly being referred to as static NFTs because they don't change. They remain the same. Dynamic NFTs, by comparison, are living tokens. So they're living, breathing things that keep changing, or that had the ability to change. And they can change and evolve over time. Dynamic NFTs are also, I think they're an important innovation. They're going to enable a range of use cases. We went through some use cases today, but I'm sure there's many more emerging. And there'll be essential tools that bring our natural and digital worlds, or the real and digital worlds, AR worlds, VR worlds, closer together. So I'm pretty excited about this new technology. And if you're building a new solution or considering building a new solution, you should definitely think about incorporating something like dynamic NFTs into it. It is definitely the future. And then lastly, before we open it up for questions, just a slide on how we can help. We can help with advisory services. We can help you choose the platform, translate your logic and processes into code. We can help you put the right checks and measures into place, set up the right smart contracts, test them, do like a serious testing on them to make sure that everything works. And then we can also help with integrating on-chain and off-chain oracles to your dynamic NFTs. And we also do comprehensive relationship mapping between the different assets and the different features of your program. This includes digital assets, NFTs, smart contracts. When you take the entirety of all these assets as a whole and how they interact with each other and how they work with each other, we do relationship mapping and we test that everything works properly. We also help audit and test your code before putting it live. And we also have a great design team. So we do design side support. And lastly, we help you create and launch your project and actually put it on a live platform and help you with token economics if required as well. So that's a little bit about how we can help you. Here's details on how you can get in touch. You can shoot me an email. You can go on the website and just message us through the website. You can connect with me on Telegram or LinkedIn or Twitter. I check all of those pretty regularly. So feel free to get in touch as and when you have questions. We'll open it up for questions, everyone. I'll just check the questions panels. There might be some there already. So we have a couple of questions. The first one is, can dynamic NFTs be used as investments? I think they can. So I think dynamic NFTs, I think you can have like a range of different investment decisions based on dynamic. So dynamic NFT, basically, it's like a living NFT. So you could have investments in different forms. One is you could invest in a dynamic NFT. You could look at I think this is more futuristic, but like you could look at the different ways in which a dynamic NFT could earn money or generate revenue. And then you could actually go and invest in the dynamic NFT by buying it or buying a portion of it. So that's one way. And in this case, let's say the dynamic NFT it holds an experience where there's a tour guide giving someone a tour in a exotic location. Every time that person takes a tour, they're releasing a micropayment. So the NFT is generating revenue, it's generating income, right? So I think that is a good use case for it as an investment vehicle. But obviously be cautious and invest at your own discretion. So we have another question, which is both DAOs and dynamic NFTs use oracles. What is the difference? There's no difference in the oracles. There's a difference in DAOs and dynamic NFTs. A dynamic NFT is it's an NFT. So it's a single token that has an experience or a detailed digital asset sitting inside that token. A DAO is it's almost like a digital company. It's a set of logic that it's like a decentralized set of logic of an organization that they've kind of translated into code, business logic or organizational logic or charitable logic. So a DAO is like a company. A dynamic NFT is just, it's an NFT that sits on a token. They both use oracles because oracles connect the real world to the digital world, and in that sense, they're important because they feed real world on-chain and off-chain data into an NFT or into a DAO. And then it depends on the DAO or the NFT how they end up using that information and what logic they unlock in relation to the information that's coming in. So we have a couple more questions. How can a dynamic NFT be used for passports and identity systems? This could work. So the legality is definitely an issue. A country would have to allow this, but you could even have like an identity system with which updates your, let's say with COVID in mind, your vaccine certificates or your travel history or something of that sort, that just has your basic user data that the checks and measures that need to happen when you go somewhere. So you could make that digitally available. Of course, at the moment, digitally, a lot of things are possible, but they first need to be legislated into actual law for them to be possible in the real world. But the use cases could be built, and then some lobbying could be done. So there are some definitely some interesting projects that could be built around that space. We have another question, which is what blockchain platform should you use for your NFT project? It totally depends on the number of factors, kind of what are you building it for? What are the use cases? Are transaction fees an issue to you? What is the nature of your project? What is the nature of your community? So there's several questions. I think it's more, this is more about dynamic NFTs than an NFT platform, but there's a lot of data about NFT platforms. I think we've done a couple of webinars before this as well, which I'll encourage you guys to check out. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for attending. I will look forward to seeing you guys next week again on our next webinar. In the meantime, feel free to get in touch with me through these details on the screen, and we'll talk soon. Thank you so much.